In late 2016, a mysterious illness struck American officials in Cuba, causing severe headaches and nausea. It all started with strange, unbearable noises that only they could hear. This illness, dubbed Havana Syndrome, affected diplomats, CIA officers, and even their families. Let's uncover the real story behind this puzzling embassy mystery. Americans have been hit in different countries, for instance, Moscow and Havana. But similar incidents, known as Havana Syndrome, have happened in many other locations too. Shanghai and Guangzhou in China, as well as Austria, Bulgaria, France, and some other countries in Europe, and Australia, Colombia, and Syria as well. Even people in national security, such as Olivia Troye, who worked in the National Security Council, have reported these symptoms. This could be seen in the way Troye felt like she was getting physically assaulted when she was walking near the White House. In addition to that, it is likely that the former President George W. Bush and his staff were also subjected to such a phenomenon in 2007 during their travel to a summit in Germany. A year later, Vice President Harris had her trip to Vietnam postponed because of the health concern that was reported by the U.S. Embassy. By the end of 2022, about 1,500 U.S. officials had experienced symptoms like headaches, dizziness, and memory problems, which can last for a long time and can be severe. Some of them even have to wear hearing aids because they can hear a persistent sound in their ears. There was also a case of the same type of the attack against Ukrainian peace negotiators in 2022, which made them ill and caused temporary blindness. Experts assumed the assailants would use poison or electromagnetic radiation, and some people accused the hardliners in Moscow of trying to undermine the peace process. Causes and culprits. The causes of such attacks and the identity of the perpetrators is a matter of heated debate. A report published on the last day of March 2023 indicated that the main factor for the disease could be pulsed electromagnetic energy. This energy could be able to penetrate the walls of buildings using technologies that are easily available, easy to move, and hide. Another report in December 2020 from the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine also concluded that weaponized microwaves could have been the culprit. This report, which was commissioned by the State Department, rendered that the health effects that became severe since 2016 could have been caused by directed pulsed radio frequency energy, which includes microwaves. If these studies are right, it will suggest that Havana Syndrome is not something that occurs naturally, but is something that people make. The initial suppositions about the person who may be responsible for Havana Syndrome were that it was the Russian government. The Russians were suspected of being behind this conspiracy because of Cuba and the similarity between the described attacks and the statements made by Russian officials who were boasting about new kinds of neurological or energy weapons. The Russian defense minister revealed in April 2012 that he was working on weapons that used directed energy and psychotronics, which could do harm to the central nervous system. Russian officials have reported that President Putin was talking about microwaves when he mentioned about the Russian developments in a new type of weapons in March 2018. Was it the Russians? On September 11, 2018, NBC News revealed that the intelligence agencies probing the mysterious attacks, which have resulted in brain injuries to U.S. personnel in Cuba and China, have Russia as the prime suspect. The conclusions were also backed by the intercepted communication, as 5 officials who are familiar with the ongoing FBI and CIA investigation said. 2 years later, as a journalist for GQ, Julia Ioffe, a Russia specialist, presented a thorough investigation on Havana Syndrome, which included data from different sources. This information, including the data from mobile phone tracking, helped the U.S. intelligence officers to trace the route of the Russian spies. Such aids were discovered to be, in many instances, in close physical proximity to CIA personnel in places like Poland, Georgia, Australia, and Taiwan during the time of the attacks. Sometimes FSB or GRU agents were staying in the same hotel as the CIA officers, and the symptoms started when they were there. In the same way, on December 7, 2020, NBC News revealed a source with direct knowledge that there were new incidents, including a CIA officer in Poland in spring 2020, 2 CIA officers in East Asia in fall 2020, and 2 other incidents in London in May and December 2019. the CIA was able to determine that the Russian intelligence agents involved in microwave weapons programs were in the same cities at the same time as the affected CIA officers through the use of mobile phone location data. Case not closed. Discouraging information has appeared from other intelligence officials, thus there is no clear evidence either from electronic intercepts or other sources to prove Russia's involvement in the attacks. An article from the New York Times on December 2, 2021 describes the evidence against Russian involvement as the highest classified intelligence from official sources. It said that the U.S. had no defectors, no penetrations, and no intercepts that could connect the attacks to Russia. The intelligence officials also did not find any hard evidence that could pinpoint the cause of the Havana Syndrome. Directed energy, such as the microwave, is the most popular theory so far according to American officials, but the CIA has been having a hard time to collect clear evidence to prove that those who suffered Havana Syndrome symptoms were targeted by some energy pulses. The investigation, with the involvement of relevant agencies like the FBI, NSA, and CIA, includes the examination of forensic evidence and surveillance tapes from American embassies. Nevertheless, they have determined that the nature of these health incidents is as puzzling today as it was a year ago. In January 2022, it was reported that a CIA task force's interim report determined that Havana Syndrome was not the result of a sustained global campaign by a hostile power targeting hundreds of U.S. diplomats and spies. However, the report didn't rule out foreign involvement in a few dozen instances, and some cases remained unresolved. Is past prologue? Russian technical attacks have a long history, starting from 1953. Through the analysis of episodes that happened during the Cold War, one can unveil the probable causes and resources behind the recent attacks on American officials. Soviet intelligence resorted to the use of advanced technology to irradiate the American embassy in Moscow in order to tap into the phone conversations of the American citizens who were stationed there, which resulted in the illness and death of some of them. Sadly, 3 U.S. ambassadors to Moscow, Chip Bolin, Llewellyn Thompson, and Walter Stossel, died of cancer at early ages as their workplaces were regularly exposed to radiation. They started in 1953 and in the end were openly discussed by Soviet leaders. In a February 26, 1976 New York Times article, the correspondent Bernard Gewirtzman revealed that the Russians had acknowledged the use of microwaves for the purpose of countering listening devices on the embassy roof. Such an admission led to the diplomatic protests, which were the outcome of the fears for the health of the American personnel due to long-term exposure to low-level radiation. Some embassy personnel were aware of and were worried about the radiological consequences of the fallout. A former embassy officer described situations when microwave radiation levels were measured next to a KGB facility. Another former officer, James Shoemaker, who felt ill with leukemia in 1985, is convinced that the government was concealing the information on such microwave attacks to avoid jeopardizing the diplomatic progress of the détente in the early 1970s. In the CIA's report, Havana Syndrome is not part of a global, well-planned attack. Yet the dialogue with Russian officials on the problem has been going on. In 2021, the senior American officials declared that Russia would be held accountable if they were engaging. The same things occurred during the Cold War when the Soviets used microwaves against the American diplomats. Notably, no new public reports of Havana Syndrome have surfaced for the past few months. A study reported the presence of symptoms without brain injuries. Now, there is an investigation of how the intelligence community has been managing the incidents. We'll just have to wait and see how it all ends.